All right, so let's try to find the area of a figure. And the first thing that you want to think about is what type of shape do I have? So here we've got a trapezoid. And let's just review that formula once again. And so we need to make sure that we have all the pieces that we need to find the area. So we need the height, which would be this distance right here. We don't know that yet, so we're going to have to calculate that ourselves. And then we need the two bases. Base up here is 8. Base down here, we don't quite know either. We know from here to here is 9, but the base would be this entire segment from end to end. So we need to figure out this and this right here. But luckily, we have a 30, 60, 90 triangle right here. So we can do that. Our hypotenuse is 10. So our side across from 30, how do we find that? Hopefully you remember we divide by 2. So that is going to be 5 meters. And then how do we find this side right here, which would be across from 60? This would be our long leg. We would multiply our short leg by the square root of 3. So now we have everything we need. Our height is this 5 times the square root of 3. Base 1, we have 8. Base 2 is 9 plus 5, which is 14. So let's plug all that into our formula. Simplify it. We get an answer of, if we do 1/2 times 5 times 22, that's 55. So we have 55 times the square root of 3. That's meters squared, right? It's an area. We ended up doing meters times meters and getting meters squared. A lot of times we're going to want to put this into a calculator to get an exact value or a estimated value. So if we do that, 55 times the square root of 3 gives us 95.26 meters squared. So that's going to be our answer, 95.26 meters squared. All right, let's look at another one. So what do we have here? We have a kite, and we're going to find the perimeter first. So in order to find the perimeter, we just need to know what all 4 sides here are. And hopefully remember, from a kite, we have 2 pairs of consecutive sides congruent. So we've got the 10 right here. We're going to have another 10 right there. We've got the 17 here. We're going to have another 17 over there. So the perimeter, 10 plus 10 plus 17 plus 17 is 54 meters. Now we got to find the area. And so for a kite, our formula is 1/2 times d1 times d2. So we need to know this entire distance here for one diagonal and this entire distance here for another diagonal. Unfortunately, we only know one of these right now. We know this 6. We need to figure out this, this, and this. So let's put some variables there. We got x. This would also be the same as x. These 2 triangles are congruent. We talked about that with kites. So we need to figure out what x is. Once we know that, we'll know this one here. And then we also need to know this distance here. We're going to call that y. We're just putting variables there so we can use them to help figure out what those sides are. So first, let's figure out x. And hopefully you can see we have a right triangle here with a hypotenuse of 10 and a side of 6. So how do we figure out a third side? Well, we just learned the Pythagorean theorem. Let's use it. X squared plus 6 squared equals 100 squared. We solve for x. We end up getting 8 meters for x. So that means that this right here is going to be 8, and this right here is also going to be 8. Okay, we still need to figure out y. Well, we can do the same thing. Again, we have a right triangle. The hypotenuse is 17. One of the sides is 8. We don't know y. Let's use the Pythagorean theorem again. Y squared plus 8 squared equals 17 squared. Y squared plus 64 equals 289. Subtract 64 from both sides, and we end up taking the square root of 225, and we get y equals 15. All right, now we know everything we need to know. So let's go back to that formula again. It's 1/2 diagonal 1 times diagonal 2. Well, diagonal 1 is 16, that 8 plus 8. Diagonal 2 is 6 plus 15. So when we plug that into our formula, we end up getting 1/2 times 16 times 21, which is 168. And again, we have square meters because we have meters times meters. All right, let's look at a different type of question. If the perimeter of a rectangle is 30 inches and the length of a rectangle is 11 inches, what is the area of the rectangle? So it might be helpful to draw a diagram. So let's do a rectangle here. The length is 11, so that means 2 of the sides are 11. We don't know what the other sides are, but we do know the perimeter is 30, so we can figure that out. Our formula here is area equals 2L plus 2W. So 30 equals 2 times 11 plus 2 times W, and we can solve for W, and we could get 4. Now, you don't have to use this formula if you just could look at it and figure this out on your own. 11 plus 11 is 22. We know it needs to add up to 30. So that leaves us 8. We divide that by 2 and we get 4, which is basically what this equation is doing. But it's important that we figure out what this missing side is so that we can plug it into the area formula and do length times width, which gives us our area. In this case, it's 44 square inches. And the last thing we're going to do is we're going to find the perimeter and area of a compound figure. All a compound figure is a figure that's made up of more than one shape here. This isn't a quadrilateral or a triangle, but it's made up of quadrilaterals, right? So we could look at this as a rectangle over here and a rectangle over here. We could look at it as a rectangle up here and a rectangle down here. You could look at it as a big rectangle with a rectangle cut out of it. So we can calculate the area many ways. But first, no matter what, we need to just figure out what this side is and what this side is. And so we can do that based on what we already have. So for example, this is going to be 4 centimeters and this is going to be 2 centimeters. How do we know that? Well, this whole distance is 8. This distance is 4. So in order to get up to the top, it needs to be 4 more. Same thing going left to right. This is 5. This is 3. So we have 2 more centimeters to get from end to end. All right. So like I said, there's a few different ways we can look at the area by dividing this up into rectangles. I've decided to divide it up into rectangles this way. So we're going to calculate the area here and then the area here and add them together. So the area down here for a rectangle is just 4 times 5. The area up here is just 3 times 4. And first I found the perimeter. Perimeter is just found by adding all these things together. I forgot that it said perimeter. We've got perimeter 4 plus 2 plus 4 plus 5 plus 8 plus 3 gives us our perimeter. Then finding the area, again, this rectangle plus this rectangle, 4 times 5 plus 3 times 4. So that gives us 20 plus 12, and we get 32 centimeters squared.